My name is Kohl Refutation, and today I will be refuting Peter's claim. And Peter's claim is that nuclear energy is the most reliable energy producing resource in the United States. His secondary claims are that nuclear energy is cost efficient, nuclear energy is environmentally friendly, and that nuclear energy is safe. Now first I want to respond to the claim that nuclear energy is cost efficient. Now what Peter claims is that uranium is very cheap and it doesn't cost very much to produce nuclear energy from power plants throughout it. But what Peter neglects to tell us is the cost that it costs to actually build the nuclear power plant in the first place. And according to the UCS USA organization, is that the industry has failed to prove that things will be different this time around. Soaring, uncertain costs continue to plague nuclear power in the 21st century. Between 2002 and 2008, for example, cost estimates for new nuclear power plant construction rose from between $2 billion and $4 billion per unit to $9 billion per unit, according to the 2009 UCS report. And what Peter is trying to say is that since uranium is so cheap, nuclear energy is so cheap, but we can't run our country based off of the amount of nuclear power plants that we currently have. We would need to build other nuclear power plants. And there's also high costs involved in the nuclear waste, such as nuclear containment vessels, and which are necessary to handle the nuclear waste, and those are made out of different exotic metals which cost money themselves to gather and use. And now his second claim that I'll be refuting is that nuclear energy is environmentally friendly. And this nuclear energy is definitely not environmentally friendly, and one thing that in his speech Peter points out is that 82% of greenhouse gas emissions are due to fossil fuels, and actually according to the EPA that is wrong. 65% of greenhouse gas emissions are because of fossil fuels. And now, thinking once again, he leaves out the fact that greenhouse gases, he claims that greenhouse gases aren't released by nuclear power or nuclear energy, but in fact the processes that are needed to create nuclear energy themselves create greenhouse gases. So nuclear fission itself does not create greenhouse gases, but methods necessary, such as mining, uranium enrichment, processing, and storing radioactive waste, all emit greenhouse gases. And now, according to nuclear physicist Manfred Lenzen, he found that the average life cycle emissions for nuclear energy based on mining high-grade uranium are 60 grams of carbon dioxide emissions per kilowatt hour, whereas for wind it's 10 to 20 grams per kilowatt hour. And according to Greenpeace.org, that all the options for handling nuclear waste have potentially large environmental and health impacts. Waste disposal sites have the potential to contaminate the environment for hundreds of thousands of years, as it takes 240,000 years for plutonium to become safe for human handling after disposal. And that's because, so for nuclear waste is constantly polluting the environment, even after it's been disposed of and put in these nuclear containment vessels, and that's why that secondary claim is invalid, because nuclear waste is always polluting the environment. And then for his third claim, the third claim that I'll be refuting is that nuclear energy is safe. And Peter claims that in his argument that low doses of radiation in fact can be beneficial to humans, and that's why they're safe. But from my research from the International Agency for Cancer Research in Lyon, France, they conducted a research of nuclear power plant workers who had been exposed to low doses of radiation, and they found that after the study they did, they found that the study confirmed that the risk of leukemia does rise proportionately with higher doses, but it also showed that a linear relationship is present even in extremely low doses of radiation. So low doses of radiation can in fact not be beneficial if they're increasing or healthy for a person if they're just increasing the rate at which workers get cancer. And now another one of the pieces of evidence that Peter uses is that from a worker from the EPA, Mario Salazar, who claims that all energy sources come with dangers, such as wind energy, which changes migratory patterns of birds. Now, I don't believe that this information is relevant at all, because changing the migratory pattern of birds, as opposed to heightening the chance of getting leukemia or cancers or other sorts of negative effects toward health, I don't believe those two are comparable effects. And for these reasons, I believe that nuclear energy is not the most reliable energy producing resource in the United States. Thank you.
All right, structural stuff is good. On the first point on cost efficiency, I thought that was your clearest and strongest argument, suggesting that his comparison on uranium compared to the other fuel sources is not really the important component in the process. It is the construction of the power plants themselves. And you had some good data here on how the costs had been exponentially increasing, which suggests that their cost efficiency is a little bit problematic. I do think that you needed a little bit more information to show how much more we'd have to build in order to be able to utilize this energy the way it's being described. You said that we couldn't replace everything with what we had now, and I'm sure that that's true, but what would be required, how many more plants would we be required to build in order to be able to substantially increase that as a source of our energy? I think you could use some information there that would help. The waste costs, I think that's an added component there. You don't have any numerical data on that, so it's mostly just kind of an assertion of here's something else to add on top without giving us much data on it. On the environmental issue, there's a little bit of a press on how significant the fossil fuel industry is to the greenhouse gases. I'm not sure that that's of critical importance. It's fine to make the differentiation, but I don't know that it helps you in the long run that much. I think the argument that suggests that there is a whole chain of things that contribute to greenhouse gases in the process of creating nuclear energy, I think that that's a good argument, but the evidence on it is missing. You kind of assert that all this storing it and mining it and transporting it and all that sort of thing is going to produce a significant amount of greenhouse gases, and I think that that's a little bit problematic. The one piece of evidence that you had does a comparison to wind energy, that we get 60 units per kilowatt hour versus 10 to 20 per kilowatt hour for the wind unit. So it's definitely more than the wind, but is wind energy the thing that's the appropriate comparison to be making here? I'm not sure that there aren't other issues that are going on here, and especially when the advocates talk about fossil fuels up above, that seems like that should be the comparison that we would want to be talking about. On the safety issue, the low-level radiation argument is okay. None of it is quantified as to who's hurt, how many more doses of radiation people get, how many more cases of leukemia that we get. And at the end, you're kind of comparing it to, well, we're back to the wind energy comparison, migratory bird patterns versus cancer risks. So I don't know. You say cancer risks seem like they're more substantial to you. I don't know. I got to be honest with you, because I don't know how much greater the risk is of leukemia because you're a worker and you get low-dose radiation. How many more cases we get of leukemia if that's, the trade-off is that we, screw up the migration of some species of bird that's pretty important and it disappears as a result. I don't know, condors or American eagles or whatever it happens to be. They're both pretty important kinds of things, but you say, well, I think one's more important than the other, but I need a reason why one's more important than the other, because it's human beings, that would be maybe an argument to make. I think that you should make that argument instead of just assuming that we're going to share the value there. Okay, thank you.